fiction or literary fiction, there's help to be acquired out there quite easily, either through the Writers Alliance or some of the other write clubs that are out there if you're in and around the metro area. But even then, there's connections to be had. Writing is, as you say, a solitary thing, and so there are no barriers for someone in a remote community anywhere in Newfoundland and Labrador now to access information that could help them or connect with an author who could help them, take their manuscript or take their piece of work to the next level. So, I mean, we've got no connectivity barriers anymore. So it's not like you have to wait for the mail. You can just fire off an email, and chances are you're connecting with someone the same day. And I know that everyone I've reached out to or who has reached out to me for help, it's been an instantaneous, yes, I can help you, or no, I can't at this time, but I can do this for you later on type thing. And it's there's lots of help to be had out there, and I think that if you're serious about your work, there's plenty of people, plenty of resources out there for you. But you have to first off, you have to admit that you're a writer, which is one of the hardest things for new emerging writers to do. Yep. You actually have to admit that you're a writer. Yes, I put words on paper. That makes me a writer.
Yep.
It really, really does. And then number two, you have to think about what your end goal is. Do you want to be published? Or do you want it to sit do you want to get it polished and let it sit in a drawer somewhere? It's entirely up to you. You're the master of your domain, and if you want it to be published, well, then there's certain standard that will need to be acquired, which means you have to be open to critique, and I mean like positive critique. I'm not talking about opening yourself up to being torn apart, because I don't agree with that at all. I think that critique needs to be carefully and methodically offered, and with the intent to bring the writer forward in their work and not try to tear them down. So I'm pretty passionate about critique as well, and how critique is portrayed and offered to especially to emerging writers.
I agree, and it could make or break a
and
writer's
it's not
confidence.
fair, and it's not fair, and it's not
because,
necessary.
Right, because you can have oodles of talent and not have honed the craft yet, and there's a sort of a balance to be struck with those two things, and so you have to be very careful. I've taken to not using the word criticism or critique anymore, and I use the word feedback. And
that's good.
A lot,
that's good.
Just because of the connotation of it, so that I don't scare people. And I'll say, well, I'll be happy to offer you some feedback on that. And and I'm also always careful to balance it with good. And
absolutely,
because I find I did a book a while back for a person who was looking to get published, and it was one of those things. I read the whole thing and I went, my gosh, this is so good. The characters were so good, and like it was sort of based in reality, and it was like so good, and it was so awful at the same time, like grammatically and it needed a full developmental edit, but it was so good. Like I could see so much potential, and I was so terrified to give the feedback because I really wanted her to write it, because I was already attached to these people and I wanted to see where she could go.
Yeah.
And she did.
Well,
she took it really well. And went off and was so careful, and I guess it worked because she was really okay, I'm going to do some rewrites. And,
but that's the other thing that a lot of writers don't understand is the difference between a substantive edit and a copy edit. They are two completely different things, and they sometimes require two completely different editors, because a substantive editor is not necessarily the best copy editor, and vice versa.
My book has been through all of them. Well, not. I didn't need deep development because I have that skill set. Like I know how to lay out a book, and I know story arc, and I know, you know what I mean. Like so, it didn't. It wasn't that deep, but it needed some. Like I said, there's timeline things, and
most
I
novels
call
will
it
need
content,
some on the first or second draft. Most novels will need some substantive editing, absolutely, because
Absolutely.
there's still a certain portion of your story that's in your head that you didn't translate to paper.
Oh yeah.
There's still guaranteed there's going to be some plot holes there. There's going to be a piece to the character arc that doesn't quite make sense or isn't developed quite enough, and those kinds of things are not about being consistent with your Oxford comma, for example,
right.
which I refuse to give up.
And I'm keeping my comma, and and those things are the last thing. Like the process does not start with that, because once you do edits and developmental edits and content edits, and by that I mean, did they really use that in that period of time? And sometimes I will have done the research and I'll still circle it and ask an editor, can you double check that for me? Because it's like I may have done it 4 years ago, right?
Right.
That they would have called that thing that. And, they will pick up things. They'll notice, I don't know that they used those engines in 1933, things like that. And then we check, and they did. You know what I mean? But those are great things to find. And so those, as many eyes as possible, I write the story. The story. I know what the story is when I'm done. It's like, this is okay, starts here and it goes here, and then this is the resolution. But within that showing and telling of the story, I can leave out things that I think I've put in. I can delete things and trying to make it better. That there's one sentence in there that gave the motivation for chapter 8, and I've taken it out now. These things happen, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's okay. And I know my weaknesses. I know what my weaknesses are. I've done and I'm getting better at them.
Of course you are.
But I still know that I will jump past tense. I will pop back and forth sometimes, is and was. When I started, you would find 50 examples of that. Now you find 10 maybe, or 8. But they're still there, so they still have to come out. And I tell an editor, watch for that. I know I do it. I get into it, and I'm writing in the zone. I go through and I try to pull them all out, but I'm not the editor, right? So
no, exactly.
Anyway.
And you have that luxury of knowing that your editor is going to find that for you anyway. And then you're still going to reread. Once you go through your editor's comments, you're going to do another read yourself anyway, because by that time you've stepped away from the piece for a certain period of time, and now you're looking at it with fresh eyes as well. And you'll go back and see, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. But you can't see everything because you're too close to it. And that's why having a good editor is worth the weight in gold.
Oh, it's just like, I love my editor. She's just fantastic. And I really lucked out. And she, just knows the type of work that I was doing. She understood that genre, I guess, historical fiction, and she knew the time period. And so I just really, really got lucky. And I appreciate it so much, because it just, it's the polish and shine, right? It's the
sure.
I do things for the paper, and I said in the column, and I don't even know what the editor's done. I just know it's better when she's done it, and it looks the same.
Yeah.
It's so subtle, but it's better. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Anyway, I'm going to let you go. Is there anything else you wanted to share? We've had a good yarn, in depth is what I said, and that's what we've delivered. If there's anything you want to add about your own books and all that, please do so on your website.
Well, thank you very much for having me. This has been a great conversation. I've really thoroughly enjoyed it. I guess if there's, readers out there who are a little more curious about me and my work, I do write Scottish historical romance. I'm starting a brand new series set in the 10th century, which is when the Vikings inhabited the Scottish island of Islay, and it's between the intermarriages between the Scots and the Vikings that I guess eventually settled the disputes in that area at that time, and so I'm hoping that book will come out sometime later this summer. And my publisher has informed me that my very first book, Bound to the Highlander, will soon be going up for permafree. So if you're thinking of picking up, it's only 99 cents now, but there's 5 books in the series and 2 novellas. And if you're interested in, checking me out, it should be free very soon. And so, have a look. Let me know what you think. And if there's any writers out there who are more curious about writing romance or historical romance or contemporary romance, you can always contact me through the best place to contact me is through Facebook, on my Facebook page. And don't get me started on the on website, because that's another conversation for another day. A marketing chat is a conversation for another day. I've let my website go. Back in 2012, when I started my website, it was all the rage. I determined a year ago that it has zero value for me anymore. So I go through my Facebook page, where all of my updates are listed and all of my books are listed and anything upcoming and relevant. So there you go. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. And I hope everyone's having a great evening.
Thank you, Debbie, and happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day to you as well.
I want the heat level to be, what is it, number 5?
Oh, you wanted the heat level to be number 5. You always do. Of course. I wish everyone gets a level 5 Valentine's this year.
That's what you want. All right. Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Bridges radio program. Find us again next Friday at 8 p.m. Bridges is produced at Citadel House Studios in Lewisport, Newfoundland and Labrador, and is a collaborative project between Carolyn R. Parsons and Citadel House.